Greetings, my name is Odin from the Odin's Musings YouTube channel, and I'm here on behalf of Aura Crystals. Today I'm going to teach you the basics of the Prismatic Right Angle Weave. This is an advancement on the Cubic Right Angle Weave, where we created a rope by building 4 sides of a column and stretching it out to make a new piece. Now prismatic just refers to a different or unusual number of beads being used to create a column, like a prism, in geometry terms. I have here some examples. Here we have our standard cubic right angle weave, which is 4 sides. I have a 3-sided prismatic right angle weave, a 5-sided, and a 6-sided. You can kind of see the difference in the sizes of the ropes based on the number of beads you have. So we're going to take the knowledge that we have learned and the techniques from the cubic right angle weave to create a variation on the stitches. Now, if you haven't watched the cubic right angle weave video, I highly recommend you check that out before proceeding on this one. There will be links down in the description box, as well as a card up in the corner here. Like in the cubic right angle weave, I will be using 4 different contrasting colors of beads. I'm using 4mm fire polish beads to make it a little easier to see. But feel free to use whatever beads you have available as long as they are the same size. I am using a D-weight white Nymo as my thread, as well as a size 12 beading needle. If you are using fire polish beads like I am, feel free to use a larger needle if you're more comfortable with that. Be sure to check down in the description box for the full materials list, as well as links to where you can purchase supplies. And with all that being said, let us get started. So if you can recall from our lessons in the cubic right angle weave, this is basically a base 4 of a prismatic right angle weave. And if we flattened this out, this is what our steps would look like. We have our anchor row, which is the 4 on the bottom seeds. We have a stitch with 3 beads, 2 beads, and 1 bead. So when we started off a new row, we added 3 beads, then 2, and finally just 1, because one of our beads from our 3-bead stitch is already there. So we only needed to add 1 more to complete this grid pattern. Using the same exact techniques, we can create a tube with only 3 anchor beads. So you can see our base anchor row is only 3 beads. We have 1 row that we add 3 beads, 1 row where we add 2, and 1 where we add only 1 bead. Then we anchor the first bead here together to form our cylinder. This works exactly the same way with more beads than 4. So if we look at a base 5, we have 5 anchor beads in our first row. Then we add 1 stitch of 3, 1 stitch of 2, 1 stitch of 2, 1 stitch of 2. So we add 3 instead of 2 in our base 4. Then we end with our single bead here. Again, with base 6, we have 6 anchor beads, 1 stitch of 3, 4 stitches of 2, and 1 stitch of 1 bead where we anchor our first beads here. Now let's take a look at what that looks like in 3-dimensional space. I am going to take the steps that I have learned from the cubic right angle weave, and I am going to create a column that is made of 5 beads instead of 4. So I've threaded on my anchor row, which is 5 beads total. I'm going to pass back through all 5 of those beads once more, so that I form a loop. Then I take my tail and my working thread and tie an overhand knot to secure everything in place. So now we have a base anchor ring of 5 beads. I'm going to pass my needle through 1 more bead just to make sure my thread is through it, and to hide the knot inside. So now I'm ready to begin my next row. And, like in cubic right angle weave, we start our very first stitch with 3 beads. So I've added 3 on here. I'm going to pass back through that same bead we're coming out of to form our next wall. This wall is going to flip up and build around our anchor row. To set up for my next stitch, I'm going to pass through the next bead on the anchor row. Next up, we add our 2 beads, go down through the previous bead from the previous wall, and through the anchor bead again. When we pull this through, we will have formed a new wall. Once again, pass through the next anchor bead to start a new stitch, add on 2 beads, go back through the previous wall, and through the anchor which we started from. So we've got something like this. Now to go to the next stitch, we pass through our anchor set, and if this was cubic right angle weave, this would be my last stitch where I only add 1 bead. However, we have 1 more bead before we reach the final anchor point here. So I need to add another stitch of 2 beads. I'm going to pass back through the wall from the previous stitch and our anchor bead that we've started from, and it starts to purse together and raise up. Now since we are on our last stitch, we go through our final anchor bead, and then we move up the first wall bead from the stitch where we've added 3 beads. Now if I purse this together, I have 3 of my 4 beads on my circle of 4. So I'm going to add just 1 bead, go down the wall across the way to bridge that gap, and then finally we set up by going through the last anchor bead again. And that will be our completed column. Now if you're having problems with thread tension, feel free to reinforce each stitch as you put them on so everything is nice and secure. So now I'm going to set up for my next row. I'm going to go up the side wall, through the top bead, and now we have our new row of 5 anchor beads on this row. I'm going to purse everything together so that everything is prominent and cinched together. Now we're ready to build our next row. Again, to start off, we add 3 beads, pass back through the first anchor bead that we've started from to create our new wall. Then we move on by passing through the next anchor bead across the way. Because I have 2 beads that already exist for this wall, I only need to add 2 beads. Then I go down the previous wall, then through the anchor bead that we started from. We rotate and go through the next anchor bead to set up for our next stitch. Again, we have 2 beads in our wall out of 4, so we add 2 beads. Go down the previous wall and through the anchor bead. Rotate and move to the next anchor bead in order to create our next stitch. Add on 2 beads. Go down the previous wall and through the anchor bead that we've started from. Now we're on our last stitch and we have 3 beads out of 4 of our wall, so we only need to add 1. We're going to set up first by passing through the next anchor bead, traveling up the very first wall that we've added in this row. Now I'm only going to add 1 bead, go down the previous wall, through the anchor bead, and that finishes the stitch, but we're going to set up for the new row by going up the wall and finally through the bead we've just added. And you continue on, so forth. We're going to reinforce the ring at the top, then you add 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. You keep going all the way up until you have the length of the rope that you desire. Ending and attaching threads are exactly the same as cubic right angle weave, so if you need more of a refresher on that, feel free to check out that video as well. And that is it for the basics on the prismatic right angle weave. It is essentially the same exact step as cubic, you just add more rows of 2 beads. So if it helps to kind of keep this kind of chart handy while you are beading, feel free to duplicate this on your own and have it for a reference. So remember, to start off, you're going to need 1 row of anchor beads, which will be the number of beads that you use and you want in your tube. So if you want 6 beads, 4 beads, 3 beads, or 5 beads, that is what you're going to add in the very first row. Then you'll have 1 row. Then you'll have as many rows of 2 beads minus 2, because you will subtract your 3 bead row and your 1 bead row. So for example, In our base 5 example, we have 1 row of 3 beads, 1 row of 1 beads, so that's 2 rows, and what we're left with after we subtract 2 and 5 is 3. So we're going to need 3 rows of 2 beads. So feel free to take what you've learned from this class and utilize it to create your own designs and projects, experiment with different sizes of beads, even create texture with using different sizes of beads inside a single project. Thank you so much for joining me on this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to check out the description box for all the materials and supplies used, as well as links for where you can purchase. And while you're down there, feel free to subscribe to Aura Crystals for more updates on new techniques and design ideas. And if you'd like to see more of my work, feel free to check me out at Odin's Musings right here on YouTube or at odinsbeadhall.com.